Baltimore made its final and ultimately futile attempt at evolutionary annexation. It was one of the major initiatives launched under Mayor James H. Preston shortly after he was elected in 1911. It would have created 4 boroughs, north, south, east, and west of Baltimore, covering approximately 150 square miles. Each borough would be politically independent and would be governed by 3 commissioners elected by the residents. Each would be entitled to elect also 1 member to the Baltimore City Council. And what they would get for that immediately was that they would fall into the jurisdiction of the Baltimore City Health Department. Their schools would be taken over by the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. And beyond this, if they wanted to, they could selectively purchase other city services that they might need, like police and fire protection, with water and sewage services, stuff like that. Mayor Preston campaigned vigorously for this plan, went all over the state making speeches on its behalf. And some suburban areas actually supported. Roland Park was one of the strongest areas that backed up Mayor Preston in this effort. But eventually, as I pointed out earlier, although introduced 3 times in the General Assembly, 3 times it was defeated. And it might have laid perhaps the groundwork for the annexation that occurred later in 1918, which, as I said earlier, was accomplished like the annexation of precincts in 1870 without allowing the residents of the annexed territory to vote on the issue. It seems to me that if we've gone down this road instead of the one that we followed, relationships between Baltimore City and Baltimore County might have been somewhat less contentious than they have been. And if Preston's borough plan had passed, we would be living in a very different kind of city, with one possible consequence being that the Baltimore City and Baltimore County Historical Society might be the same organization.
Yes.
I have a question, interested in water. Could you talk a little bit about the relationship with Loch Raven and Baltimore City, Baltimore County? I touched on that, but obviously we're here.
Well, that was the topic that Ed Pappenfuss was going to
Well,
center his marks on. And I speak from limited knowledge, but I suppose the conventional wisdom, as far what I know, is that Baltimore City had an expansive and far-reaching desire to create water systems. It acquired the property rights to a reservoir system that, I guess the first reservoir system was Roland Park, in Lake Roland, I'm trying to say.
It was where the central branch of the Pratt Library is now. That was the first reservoir. It was on high ground, so it could be carried by gravity.
Yeah, and there was a water company at the corner of Center Street and Calvert Street. But the next initiative was in the 1850s. Lake Roland was put in place, capturing that water system, the Jones Falls, and it soon became clear in only about 20 years that was not going to have adequate supply and had problems with quality. And then moved to the gunpowder system in Lake Roland. Loch Raven. And in order to put Loch Raven in place, you had to flood the Milltown Warren. So we'll get Ed Pappenfuss back on his feet, and we'll have a more knowledgeable and effective discussion of what happened when. The gentleman, yes,
It wasn't planned, but it's a perfect segue. Baltimore County Historical Society is planning a tour of the whole waterworks, starting at Hopkinsville right on down to the city. So keep an eye on this.
Just as an anecdote, as a child, I remember seeing volunteer firemen from Violetville. They still kept their volunteer fire department, even though they had been annexed by the city. Still exists.
Yeah.
Really?
it's still putting out fires, or
Yep.
just having
It's the Colts band.
Most We're the volunteer firemen in Bolton because now they have to get paid for it.
Gentleman, lady in the back?
How is it that there are no incorporated towns in Baltimore County, and is that in relation to these issues?
Baltimore County follows a legal pattern that's common to many states of the South, which is county government is the
Okay.
principal government, and there are no incorporated towns.
Right.
So I guess it's just legal tradition.
Just is, okay.
Matt, the current law on annexation is what was added in 1945, the state constitution. So the annexees and the annexers have to, although that'll never happen, but that's the current law.
Right.
Yeah.
They have to be consulted every time.
Right.
But as you pointed out,
It's not gonna happen.
What, since the people that like lived in Mount Washington and Hamilton, Roland Park couldn't vote, and they probably didn't want to be annexed into it, how did they sell that idea, or did they try to sell it?
I only know about the one from 1817,
Okay.
and this may have something with the 1918 experience too. The people who lived in Baltimore at that time, and people who lived in the precincts around Baltimore, were predominantly Republicans, which is to say, confusingly, Jeffersonian Democrats. The people outside that area were mostly Federalists. So what they did, Baltimore County had 4 representatives in the General Assembly. Baltimore City has had 2. They dumped 17,000 Democrats into Baltimore City, gave no extra representation. And then the Federalist majority in the rest of Baltimore County had a better chance of electing 4 Federalist representatives in the General Assembly. That's how they sold that. Maybe Wayne knows more about that.
Yeah, that's fine. The one article, I think, did Joe Arnold write the article? That's a really good article. It's in the Maryland
Very historical.
Historical Society, because it tells the whole story from
Yeah.
the 1790s to 1918, and as I recall, it goes into a lot of detail about the whole 1918 affair.
I should have brought it with me, but the library is very helpful.
Yes.
You said that you were referring to property taxes early 19th century. Did that include personal property as well as real property?
Yeah, it did.
Yes.
And it included a lot of other things too. There was, for example, a tax on building tables, riding horses, certain kinds of coaches, exhibitions and theatrical productions. All of those went into the pot, so that they wouldn't have to raise property taxes.
It's easy to forget that a major form of personal property was for slaves.
Yeah.
So slave holdings had a good deal to do with one's wealth and one's taxes.
What was the difference between the tax rate in the city and the county?
Well, it wasn't as big as it is now. You know that? I don't know what the
Yeah.
tax rate was.
Under the first mayor, who was the first mayor? Calhoun. I think all the city property, I think it was $4 a house.
Yeah.
That was the whole deal.
So a lot of money.
Yeah, which was a lot of money.
You said-
You said in 1957, Baltimore County got to elect their first county executive. What was the history with the other counties in the state? Was that unique, or was that sort of the...
I think I heard on the radio this week that Frederick County is giving it some serious thought even as we speak. So, do you have a better
Now, I think,
list than I do? Montgomery County is also
Yeah,
a notable county. And
Cecil just approved
right.
charter government.
And
this
Prince
past-
George is,
Yeah.
I guess on the eastern shore, it's mostly commissioners.
Yeah.
Carroll, yeah, and Carroll. And, but Hartford has.
Yeah.
County executive.
Howard County. Howard County.
So you,
yes.
When looking for records, it's very difficult to find records in Baltimore City, but I'm specifically interested in the times of transition, like 1851 to 1854. Would those records of Baltimore County be in the city? Would they be, where would they be found?
well, and there are in fact, there's a trove of records. which is presided over by Ed Pappenfuss, in a warehouse in Waco, which has, the roof doesn't leak, it's better than the old one. They have some temperature control. And that's where I do most of my work, in my research. Also thank London to Ed, but to the WPA, because they sent in a bunch of unemployed archivists in 1938, and they went through and they classified and numbered all the documents, and now it's online, the numbering system. So you, typically what I do is I find out what I want online, I send an email to one of the staff saying which records I need, and in the morning when I get there, they're sitting there. So it's a fantastic system, and more people should know about it.
In that respect, we were mentioned earlier that the Baltimore City Historical Society is having a May conference. The topic of that conference is the Baltimore City Archives Alive. And we're celebrating the fact that they are back in business in a very professional fashion. We're going to be talking about the research that's been done there. Brendan Costigan, who's in the audience, is going to talk about his research into criminal records. And other researchers will talk about what they've been up to. So it'll be a great window of opportunity to come and learn about how to do research at that place.
Really interesting. There's one project right now, for example, we're working on history of the Baltimore Symphony. And I think probably from 1851 on, when the county acquired its courthouse, its records would be separate from Baltimore City.
Was Bellefort's eastern boundary when Belleport became part of Baltimore City in 1797? What was the eastern boundary of the city?
It was, well, Belleport became part of the city in 1773.
I think that's right.
And just beyond Belleport, I don't know if the street was, would have been the eastern boundary of the city. And how far, Baltimore Street, outside the city, Baltimore Street was the boundary of the eastern precincts. Remember, I was hoping to talk about Wayne. I see you how I have the statutory language that describes the boundary. It says things like through the yards.
Right, exactly.
By the red oak tree.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's hard. I've had a lot of trouble trying to figure it out. There is a map that was in Joe Arnold's article, but you can't. It's too fuzzy to read.
We thank you very much.
Okay.